We're going to start, inshallah ta'ala, today going over Juz' 3. That's from Al-Baqarah 253 to Al-Imran 92. So we have about 40 verses left of Al-Baqarah. I'm just rounding. And then we're going to start in Surat Al-Imran, inshallah ta'ala, until Al-Imran 92. That'll be the third juz'. So then that means we'll go into the fourth juz', still reading in Al-Imran. So what do you know then about the juz's, the ajza of the Quran versus the suwar, the chapters of the Quran, the parts or the segments of the Quran, the ajza versus the suwar, the surahs of the Quran, that they overlap. They don't necessarily start and stop in unison. Sometimes a new juz' starts at the top of a surah, and sometimes it doesn't. And so the author says, starting with the word of God Almighty, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تلك الرسل فضلنا بعضهم على بعض. Those messengers, we have preferred some of them over others. Yani, we have given some of them favor over others by some having special traits not found in others. Minhum man kallama Allah. For example, among them is he to whom Allah spoke, like Moses and Muhammad. Allah spoke to Muhammad too. وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ. And he raised some of them over others by many ranks. Muhammad in particular, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So you have here in this ayah what's called iltifat. Iltifat. I'll type it out for you. Iltifat. Iltifat is when you shift from pronouns or shift between pronouns, between speaker, addressee, and spoken about. Speaker, spoken to, and spoken about. You have three cases. Either the pronoun is for the speaker, or the pronoun is for the one spoken to, or the pronoun is for the one spoken about. So it starts with the pronoun for the speaker. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ. Those messengers, we have preferred some of them over others. Who's we? We is the speaker here. That's Allah. In this case, he glorifies himself. It doesn't mean that there's someone with him, but that's his glorifying himself. And if anyone ever argues with you about we in the Quran, it's because he's ignorant. What did some of the wise ones say? They said, if I debate with an ignorant person, I lose. And if I debate with a knowledgeable person, I win. But then it switched. Minhum man kallama Allah. For example, among them is he to whom Allah spoke. So Allah is the one being spoken about here. It doesn't say minhum man kallamnahu, for example, whom we spoke to him, saying Allah spoke to him. So it went from speaker, we, to spoken about, which is Allah. وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ. And he raised some of them over others by many ranks, Muhammad in particular. So that's still spoken about. Rafa'a, he, the one we're speaking about, raised some of them over others. But then it went back. وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى بِنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. And we gave Jesus, son of Mary, the obvious miracles. All of the prophets had miracles, and Jesus had many, many, many miracles. وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ. And we strengthened him with Gabriel, the Holy Spirit. That means Allah strengthened Jesus with Gabriel's company because being in the company of the angel is blessed. It's a blessing. That's why they said the best that Prophet Muhammad would be, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was in Ramadan because that's when he would meet the angel more frequently. Encountering that angel is a blessing. So Jesus being accompanied by Gabriel was a blessing for him. Allah supported Jesus in this way. وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ, and we strengthened him with Gabriel, the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Soul. Gabriel's an angel. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا اقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِم مِّن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ. And had Allah willed, those who came after their prophets would not have differed and then fought each other after there came to them the clear miracles. وَلَكِنِ اخْتَلَفُوا, but they did differ by His will. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَفَرَ. So some of them believed. Among them is who believed, and among them is who disbelieved. So some of them believed, and some of them disbelieved. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا اقْتَتَلُوا, and had Allah willed everyone's guidance, they would not have fought. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ, but Allah does whatever He wills, granting success to whom He will and disappointment to whom He willed. He makes some of those blessed prophets, and He makes others blessed saints, and He makes others good Muslims, and He makes others sinful Muslims, but at least they're Muslims, and He makes others wretched kuffar, and some of them are worse than others. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم. O those who have believed, spend in zakah, or spend to support the jihad effort. من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة, before there comes a day in which there is no bargaining, nor solidarity, there's no bargaining and there's no solidarity. As for that there's no bargaining, that's the day when there's no golden or silver coin. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has infringed upon the right of his fellow believer, then let him redeem himself now in this lifetime, before there comes a day when there is neither a golden coin nor a silver coin. There won't be any money you can pay, and you would wish that you could pay. If you encountered the torture of Allah, then if you had the whole world and double the whole world, if you had double the amount of the whole world, you would pay all of it as a ransom to escape the torture of Allah. And if you could give your wife and your child and even the most generous person who took you in, if you could give all of them as a ransom to save yourself from the torture of Allah, you would give them. Always keep that in mind. You would give your children as a ransom to spare you from the torture of Allah. And you would give everyone in the world to spare you from the torture of Allah. And as for there's no solidarities, because there's no ties between the people on that day, except those who were friends for the sake of Allah, those who loved each other for the sake of Allah. As for those who loved each other for their worldly benefits and they sinned together, they will hate each other, and their friendship that they had in this life, or their family ties, or their religious bond that they had in this life will be broken. They won't care for each other in any way. وَلَا شَفَاعَةٍ, nor will there be any intercession for the believers without permission, or for the blasphemers absolutely. The likes of this ayah, like we mentioned before, the Mu'tazila used the likes of this ayah to deny intercession altogether. Because to them, this ayah means before a day comes when there's no bargaining and there's no solidarity and there's no intercession, period. But there is intercession on that day because there's other proofs about that. Other ayat and also hadiths. So then, how do we explain this? Wala shafa'ah, nor any intercession. It means there's not going to be any intercession for believers without permission. But if there's permission granted for this believer, he would get intercession. Yani, no one can even intercede, do the intercession without permission. Those who intercede, the prophets, the martyrs, the angels, the practicing scholars, the children who were born before, the children who died before puberty, and others, they will not be able to intercede unless they get permission first. And they won't intercede but for believers. And for the kuffar, there is absolutely no intercession. وَالْكَافِرُونَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, and the unbelievers, they are the epitome of the unjust. Yani, they are the worst. They are the most unjust. They are the unjust ones because of their blasphemy. Alif Lam here, which translates as the. This Alif Lam is for the most perfect example of the kind. The, which means the perfect example. The unbelievers, they are the perfect example of the unjust, meaning they are the most unjust because of their kufr. Their kufr makes them most unjust. Allahu la ilaha illahu. This is Ayatul Kursi. Ayah 255 of Surat Al-Baqarah. This is the greatest ayah of the Quran. Allahu la ilaha illahu. Allah. There is no rightfully worshipped one but He. Al-Hayyul Qayyum. Al-Hayyul Qayyum. The ever-living, the everlasting independent manager of all. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Nodding from drowsiness does not overtake him. Nodding from drowsiness does not overtake him, nor sleep more so. Yani, if he is not overtaken by drowsiness, then for sure he is not overtaken by sleep, which is deeper than drowsiness itself. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. To him belongs possession and creation of what is in the heavens and what is in the earth. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who is it that shall intercede with him but by his permission? No one. So there, the very next ayah confirms the intercession, which is Ayatul Kursi. The ayah right before Ayatul Kursi, which is 254, someone would use it to deny intercession, and then the very next ayah confirms it. So there is intercession. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. He knows what is before them and what is after them concerning the earthly life and the afterlife. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. They do not encompass any of what is known to him except what he willed to make them know. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His kursi is a vast platform that physically extends beyond the limits of heavens and earth, even had they been side by side. His kursi spans beyond heavens and earth. Heavens and earth are stacked one over the other, and his kursi is wider than they are. And had they been lying side by side, his kursi would still be wider than they are. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا. Preserving them both exhausts him not. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. And he is Al-Ali Al-Azim, the most majestic, the great. So Al-Ali means the one who's attributed with Ulu. Ulu means highness, and his highness is his perfection, and his perfection is his godhood. And Al-Azim means the one who's attributed with Azamah, and Azamah is greatness, and his greatness is also his perfection, and his perfection is his godhood. So his attribute of Ulu and his attribute of Azamah, they are two names for the same attribute. La ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion of the hearts in the religion. No compulsion of the hearts, but there could be compulsion of the limbs. This ayah, if this ayah denies compulsion of the limbs, then it's abrogated. If it denies compulsion of the limbs, that's before the Muslims were allowed to fight. Or else it doesn't deny compulsion of the limbs. Compulsion of the limbs is like when there's war and then the Muslim soldier makes the other one say the Shahada. Or a defeated army has to embrace Islam and then they're going to pray. They're going to bow down and sujood, put their faces on the ground. Even if they really don't believe in reality, Allah knows their situation. But for us, we're going to deem them as believers after we compel their tongues. So that's how you explain this ayah. And it does not mean there's no compulsion of the limbs at all. Like we just said, if it means there's no compulsion of the limbs in the religion, then that was before they were allowed to fight. And then that would mean this is now abrogated. According to that way of explanation, this is abrogated because there is compulsion of the limbs. But there's no compulsion of the hearts, that's for sure. Even if you compel the limb, you cannot compel the heart to believe. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. By the clear proofs, the guidance, which is the belief, has become distinct from the misguidance and the ignorance, that is blasphemy. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. So whoever disbelieves in the devil and believes in Allah, then he has taken a firm conviction, unshakable by fallacies. A firm conviction, unshakable by fallacies. It is as if he has taken hold of the firmest handhold, having no splittage. And the non-Muslims, they see that about the Muslims. The Muslims are very adherent to their religion. Some of the Christians said a common Muslim is as religious as our religious men, like their priests, their high ones, their high priests. Common Muslim is as religious as those. And the scholar and the saint, he surpasses those by far in terms of the firmness of his faith. Wallahu sami'un alim. And Allah is hearer of his confession and of whatever else he said. And Allah is hearer of his confession, that's according to Nasafi, and hearer of whatever else he said, that's according to Jalalain. Knower of his conviction and of whatever else is done. Allahu aliyyul ladhina amanu. Allah is the supporter of those who believed, and he is the manager of their affair. يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور, taking them out of the various darknesses of blasphemy and misguidance. The various darknesses, because it's plural. من الظلمات, out of the darknesses. إلى النور, to the one and only light of faith and guidance. Nur is singular. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ, and those who disbelieved, their supporters are the devils. يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ, taking them out of the light of clear evidence into the darknesses of doubt and fallacy. أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ, those are the inmates of the fire. Hum fiha khalidun, they shall be in it remaining, yani forever. They shall be immortals in that fire, that is tortured in that fire, living immortally. Immortally means not dying, but immortal doesn't mean impervious. ألم تر إلى الذي حاج إبراهيم في ربه أن آتاه الله الملك. Do you, O Muhammad, not know of Nimrod, who debated Abraham about his Lord because of the entitlement he felt because Allah gave him dominion? Who's this Nimrod? He's one of the conquerors of the earth. There are 4 conquerors of the earth. 2 of them are kuffar and 2 of them are believers. And this man was one of the kuffar. The other one, I need to double check to be sure who he is. Because I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me if I don't tell you. But I'm not sure. I need to double check. 4 were conquerors of the earth. And being a conqueror of the earth doesn't mean that he knows about every town on earth. Doesn't mean he has necessarily every control over every land on the earth, but he would be the dominant one. And then these conquerors, if they encountered anyone that's not under their dominion, they will conquer them. He was the first one, and they were in Babylon. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِي حَاجَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ فِي رَبِّهِ, do you not know of who debated Abraham about his Lord? And آتاه الله الملك, because of the entitlement he felt, because Allah gave him dominion. That's after Prophet Ibrahim broke their idols. You know, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he had to deal with idol worshippers and star worshippers and people who worship this man himself. He claimed to be God after his people were in the depths of ignorance. One person said, there was never a time in history when people were this ignorant, but maybe there was, because his people were so ignorant, they worshipped him. That's along with the easy living they had. So you look at some countries like America, people are so ignorant, but I don't think they're going to worship Joe Biden, for example, or something like that. So, and they're very deluded by the expansion that Allah Ta'ala gave them. Those were also very deluded by the expansion that Allah gave them, but they were so ignorant that they worshiped this man. So, do you not know of Nimrod, who debated Abraham about his Lord because of the entitlement he felt, because Allah gave him dominion? Yani, so Abraham, he debated with the idol worshippers and the star worshippers, and there were people who worshiped this man. He refuted the star worshippers, and he refuted the idol worshippers, and he destroyed their idols, and then they wanted to try him for destroying their idols. And Nimrod attended this trial, and Abraham alayhi salam, he refuted all of them in their own trial. So Nimrod stepped to him himself and debated with Abraham alayhi salatu wassalam. إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت, when Abraham said, my Lord is he who creates life and creates death. قال أنا أحيي وأميت, he said, I create life and I create death. So he wasn't saying the same thing Abraham was saying. When Abraham said create, he meant something that this man didn't mean. Yani, Abraham said, Yuhyi wa yumit. My Lord is life creator and death creator. He said, Ana uhyi wa umit. I am life creator and I am death creator. So then he took two people, he killed one and he set the other one free to demonstrate his point. So Abraham then, he moved to something that this man couldn't claim. قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب. Said Abraham, well, surely Allah brings the sun from the east, so bring it from the west. And we say this is taken literally. This is not figure of speech. Question, was it Prophet Ibrahim's father or uncle, the disbeliever mentioned in the Quran? We say it's his father. There's a difference in opinion about that. Some said it's his uncle, but that's not here. This is different from what we're talking about. So this ayah is taken literally. This is evidence that the sun moves, along with other ayats, like when Allah says, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. The sun runs in a pathway that it has. That means the sun is moving. It's not that the sun is in its place and the earth is going around the sun. Rather, the earth is in its place and the sun is moving in its own pathway. I didn't say the sun is moving around the earth. There's a type of person, when I said the sun is moving in its own pathway, that sounded like I said the sun is moving around the earth. I didn't say that. And there's other ayats that prove that the sun is moving. كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. This ayah, it means all of them, that's the day, the night, the sun, and the moon. All of them are in an orbit. Each one has its own orbit, swimming. Each one is swimming in its own orbit. What you want me to say? You need to be more specific because it's clear. The sun is moving. So what do you want me to say? That's clear. So give me more specific question. قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق. Said Abraham, well, surely Allah brings the sun from the east. فأت بها من المغرب. So bring it from the west. فبهت الذي كفر. Then puzzled was he who disbelieved. He was dumbfounded. He was astonished. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Allah does not guide the argumentation of the unjust, blaspheming folk. Moving means goes from one place to another place. It's not that the sun, now I'm going to say what I said the first time. It's not that the sun is still somewhere and the earth is moving around it. Rather, the earth is still in its own place and the sun has its own pathway. So if you have another question, you can ask me. So sun has its own pathway. You see the sun like I see the sun, rises in the east, sets in the west. Yeah, the earth is not moving. So that's the third time I said it, even though the Prophet does repeat himself. You just want to be very sure that I said what I said. So this ayah about Prophet Ibrahim, it has in it many lessons. Amongst those lessons is the permissibility of debating deviant people. Amongst them is also a lesson about the creation of life and the creation of death. And actually, this lesson about the creation of life and the creation of death, this is the theme of the upcoming verses too. So this next verse says, is a different story, but has same theme of creation of life and creation of death. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها. Or do you not know of Uzair, that one who passed by a ruined town of Jerusalem? whose walls had fallen in upon its collapsed rooftops. Yani its walls were over the rooftops because the rooftops fell down and then the walls collapsed in on top of them. After Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed the town. When did he destroy the town? He destroyed the town, according to what we learned, he destroyed the town after Herodes had Yahya killed. And also they killed Zachariah. He did that because, why he killed Yahya? Because he wanted to have relations with his stepdaughter. Prophet Yahya told him it's haram. So he killed him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Before that, he used to like Prophet Yahya. And then they cut off Yahya's head and his blood spilled and it bubbled on the ground and the ground would not absorb his blood. It just stayed there bubbling. And they went after Zachariah alayhi salatu wassalam and they killed him too. They saw this body with a saw alayhi salatu wassalam. So then it was said that this king Nebuchadnezzar, he came to Jerusalem and he found the blood bubbling. And a woman told him the whole story. When she told him the story, it enraged him how this man killed Prophet Yahya because he wanted to have relations with his stepdaughter. So then he left, and he came back with a massive army, and they almost wiped out the Israelites. And he ordered his army to put the whole city under dirt. And then whoever survived, they took them back to Iraq. And they had to bury the Torah in an attempt to preserve it because they were not hafiz of the Torah, like the nation of Muhammad are hafiz of the Quran. Then after some time, situation changed. Allah Ta'ala enabled this man, Uzair, to come back to Jerusalem. I didn't hear he was a Roman, Herodes. I didn't hear he was a Roman. But now that you ask me, I don't know. No, Herod. His name's Herod, not Herodes. Sorry. Herod is his name. The girl was Herodes or Herodias. Their names are close. He avenged Prophet Yahya. I haven't learned it this way. What I learned was this enraged him. This story enraged him. So he came back and destroyed their town. Was Nebuchadnezzar a Muslim? No, he was a kafir. So Uzair came back to Jerusalem. And this is what the ayah is telling us. Uzair's name in English is, they say, Ezra. أو كالذي مر على قرية. Or do you not know of Uzair, that one who passed by a ruined town of Jerusalem? وهي خاوية على عروشها. Jerusalem, whose walls had fallen in upon its collapsed rooftops after Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed it. Do you know of that, O Muhammad? This following the question in the previous ayah. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِي حَاجَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Do you not know of the one who debated Abraham? أَوْ كَالَّذِي مَرَّ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ. Or do you not know of Uzair, that one who passed by a ruined town of Jerusalem? قال أَنَّى يُحْيِي هَذِهِ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. He exclaimed in desiring to see resurrection and in deeming the power of Allah great. He exclaimed, he said as an exclamation, he said with faith in his heart, desiring to see resurrection, and he said in deeming the power of Allah great. أَنَّى يُحْيِي هَذِهِ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. How will Allah revive the people of this town after its death? فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ ثُمَّ بَعَثَهُ. Then in the morning, Allah made him die for 100 years. Then in the afternoon, Allah resurrected him to show him how. So in the afternoon means 100 years later. He died one morning, And then he was resurrected 100 years later in the afternoon, yani at Asr time. He died in the morning and he was resurrected at Asr time. قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ, said an angel, how long did you stay dead? So it was reported that before the angel said this, what happened? Allah made him die. And he had a donkey with him too. And Allah made his donkey die. It was reported that he sat under a tree. And then right there, he just died. And Allah veiled him and his donkey from the scavengers and the birds. So they died right there, and their bodies decomposed. So according to this story, his body decomposed. And if his body decomposed, then it means he's not a prophet. And it was reported that when Allah willed to resurrect him, Allah Ta'ala first recreated his heart so that he could think. Then Allah Ta'ala recreated his eyes so that he could see. And then he saw his body regenerate. Then after he came back to life, قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ, said an angel, how long did you stay dead? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ, he said, I stayed dead for a day. Then he looked at the sun and he saw that the sun was ready to set. So the last thing he knew was it was morning time. So the angel asked him, how long have you been here? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا, he said, I've been here for a day. Then he looked at the sun and he saw that the sun was, that it was Asr time. The sun is ready to set. And the last thing he remembered was that it was morning time. So then he changed his saying and he said, أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ, or part of a day. And this is evidence that there's something called ijtihad, because that's what he did. He made ijtihad. He didn't have definitive evidence for how long he stayed there. So based on something, he gave an answer. He said a day. Then he looked for a clue. He looked for proof. He looked for the sun. So then when he saw the sun where it was, and he remembered the last thing he knew, then he changed his saying and he said, "Oh, ba'da yawm," or I've been here for part of a day. So what is the name of that person? His name is Uzair. قَالَ بَلْ لَبِثْتَ مِئَةَ عَامٍ, said the angel, in fact, you have been dead for 100 years. فَانظُرْ إِلَى طَعَامِكَ وَشَرَابِكَ لَمْ يَتَسَنَّهْ, but look at your food, your basket of figs, and your grapes. And look at your drink, your cup of juice. It did not change by the passage of years. And it was said he was 40 years old when he died. So he came back to life just like he died. And this is the case Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's how it is when the people come back to life. Even in different stories that we know about, for people who came back to life in the dunya, Allah brings them back like how they died. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you come back like how you died. So if you die as a youngster, you're going to come back as a youngster. If you die as a baby, you're going to come back as a baby on Judgment Day. If you die as an old man or old woman, you're going to come back Yawm al-Qiyamah as an old man or old woman. But if you enter paradise, Allah will give you a new body, 33 years old, and much larger than the bodies we have now. وَانظُرْ إِلَى حِمَارِكَ, and look at your donkey. He looked and saw that all that remained were its withered white bones. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ, and we resurrected you so to make you a sign for the people. Allah is the one who resurrected him, not the angel. وَانظُرْ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا, and look at the bones of your donkey, how we lift them and make them converge and set, meaning his donkey's bones were scattered. So then the angel told him, look at your donkey's bones. So he looked, and then he saw the bones coming back together again. ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا لَحْمًا. Then we clothe them with flesh. This means after the bones came back, then he started seeing the nerves growing over the bones and whatever different types of flesh come. And then he saw the muscle come over that, and then the skin came over that, and then the hair came out of the skin, and it was still dead. And then the angel blew a soul into the donkey's nostrils, and then the donkey became alive by the will of Allah. فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ قَالَ أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Then, when what he already believed became clear to him by way of observation, he said, أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. I know that Allah is over everything, very powerful. As Qadir is an emphatic form of Qadir. So then he went back to his people, and he was fresh 40-year-old man with round muscles and black hair. So first he went back to where he used to stay, and there was old lady there. She was crippled. She couldn't walk. So he went in there and he said, is this Uzair's house? And then she started crying. She said, Uzair, I haven't heard that name in so long. He said, I'm Uzair. And she went blind too. She told him, if you are Uzair, Uzair was a man who had an accepted dua. Make dua for me and ask Allah to cure me. So he made dua for her and she was cured. She could stand up and she could see. So she saw him, and then she took him to the people. All the people he knew who were still alive, they were all old, and he had a son. His wife was pregnant when he died. So that means his son is 100 years old. All those people were having sagging skin, white hair, hunched backs. So she said, oh people, this is Uzair. Allah brought him back as a strong young man. So the people were in doubt. His son questioned him. His son said, my mother told me that my father had a birthmark like a crescent on his back. So he put his shirt down so that he could show his birthmark. But they still wanted to check. So some of them said, Uzair, he knew where the Torah was buried. So he took them to the Torah. They lost it. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. And when Abraham said, my Lord, show me how you give life to the dead. قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. Said God to him, so that he would state his reason for asking, for the sake of whoever hears the story. Because God already knows the answer. So he asked Abraham a question so that Abraham would state his reason. And then the believers like ourselves who hear his story would know his reason. قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. He asked him, do you not believe? قَالَ بَلَى وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. He said, indeed I do, but I only ask to reinforce the certainty of my heart. قَالَ فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِّنَ الطَّيْرِ. Said God, then take 4 birds. It was said they were a peacock, a rooster, a crow, and a pigeon, or an eagle. Yani 4 different kinds of birds. فَصُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ. And incline them towards you for inspection. Yani summon those birds to you. Then dismember them, O Abraham. ثُمَّ اجْعَلْ عَلَى كُلِّ جَبَلٍ مِّنْهُنَّ جُزْءًا. Then place upon every mountain a piece of them. Yani put segments of these dismembered birds on mountaintops. Then you stand in one central location, O Abraham. ثم ادعوهن يأتينك سعيا. Then call them, they shall come to you flying. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And know that Allah is undefeated and wise. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Allah knows best. We didn't even go too far over time. Do you have any question I can answer for you? So he took them to the Torah. They uncovered it, and it was ruined. So they only had pieces, and they didn't have a hafiz. But Uzair was a hafiz, but he wasn't a prophet. And he recited the Torah for them, and that's how they retrieved it. Had it not been for Uzair, they would have lost the Torah. But by retrieving it this way, they lost any tawatur they might have had. You know, tawatur, that successive mass narration. They didn't have any tawatur. Then they got it from Uzair. He recited it for them, and they filled in the gaps. And because of this feat, the ignorant among them worshipped him, and they said, he is the son of Allah. The people, when he did that, they were rubbing themselves on him and everything. You know how people treat the awliya. And some of them said, he is the son of Allah. And those are the people that Allah said about them, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ عُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah. The Jews said Uzair is the son of Allah. That's not all of the Jews. That's a sect of them. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.